The first thing you learn in Army intelligence is that panic gets you killed. The second thing you learn is that the most dangerous threats don't announce themselves. They wait until you're asleep. It was 2 a.m. on October 15th when I woke to my wife's voice. Not screaming, not crying, controlled, professional, like she was ordering coffee at a drive-through window. My husband attacked me. He has a gun. Please, he's going to kill me. 1847 Maple Ridge Drive. Please hurry. I didn't move. My body understood before my brain caught up. 12 years of training taking over while consciousness played catch-up. Assessment first? Always assessment first. I kept my breathing slow and even, taking in the room through the narrow slit of barely opened eyes. Victoria stood at the bedroom doorway, phone pressed to her ear, the blue glow of the screen illuminating the planes of her face. She was positioned perfectly, backlit by the hallway light, framed in the doorway like an actress hitting her mark. She was wearing makeup. At 2 in the morning. Her hair was styled. Not sleep-tousled. Styled. The careful waves she spent 45 minutes creating every morning. She was waiting for me to fall asleep. My eyes shifted to the nightstand. My service pistol sat there, positioned perfectly within reach. The same pistol I always kept in the biometric safe in the closet. The same pistol that required my fingerprint to access. She'd planned this. She'd planned this with the kind of meticulous attention to detail that I'd once admired in her. The way she organized dinner parties, managed her team at work, curated our social media presence. She'd applied that same precision to my destruction. Victoria's eyes met mine. She wasn't afraid. There was no terror in those green eyes I'd looked into for 9 years of marriage, 3 years of dating before that. There was calculation, assessment. She was watching me the way a scientist watches a lab rat navigate a maze, curious to see if I'd take the bait. She mouthed one word, "Don't." And I understood everything. If I moved toward her, I was the aggressor. If I reached for the gun, I was armed and dangerous. If I called out that she was lying, I was the delusional abuser denying reality. If I did anything except exactly what I did next, I was dead. The police were coming. Armed. Expecting a violent suspect. Dispatch had already told them. Armed man, threatening wife, shots possibly fired. They'd roll up with adrenaline pumping and fingers on triggers, looking for a threat to neutralize. I had maybe 4 minutes. I rolled off the bed, placed my hands on my head, and lay face down on the carpet. I pressed my forehead into the fibers that still smelled faintly of the lavender carpet cleaner Victoria used. I spread my legs. I interlocked my fingers behind my skull. I made myself as non-threatening as a 6'2", 200-pound man with Army training can make himself. And I waited. 6 officers entered at 3:12 a.m. I know because I counted every second. 204 of them, each one lasting an eternity. They came through the front door, she'd left it unlocked, of course, and swept the house with the precision of men expecting the worst. I heard them clearing rooms, kitchen clear, living room clear, moving upstairs. Hands! Let me see your hands. Already showing, I said, keeping my voice flat. Calm, unthreatening. I'm face down on the floor, hands interlocked behind my head. No weapons on my person. The firearm is on the nightstand. I have not touched it. They approached anyway with their guns drawn. I didn't blame them. The call they'd received painted a picture of a monster. Don't move! Don't you move! Not moving, I confirmed. I'm fully compliant. I understand you're responding to a domestic violence call. I have not committed any violence. I'm remaining still for everyone's safety. The words came out like I was reading from a script because, in a sense, I was. I'd written that script years ago, during training exercises about exactly this scenario. What to do if you're ever the target of a false report. How to survive the first critical minutes when misunderstanding can turn fatal. I felt the knee in my back, the handcuffs ratcheting tight around my wrists. Too tight, but I didn't complain. The rough hands patting me down for weapons. "He's right there," Victoria's voice came from the corner of the room. I heard the tremor she'd manufactured. Not too much, not too little. Perfectly calibrated fear. "He choked me. He said he was going to kill me." She was hitting every note. I'd interrogated enough people to recognize performance when I heard it. "Sir, you're under arrest for domestic." "I want a lawyer," I said. "Now." That was all I said. Those were the only words I spoke for the next 6 hours. They stood me up, walked me downstairs, past the family photos on the wall, past Ethan's school artwork taped to the refrigerator, past the life I'd built brick by brick over 9 years. They put me in the back of a patrol car while more officers arrived, while forensic techs began photographing the crime scene. Through the window, I watched my wife being interviewed on our front lawn. She was crying now, or appeared to be. She gestured toward the house, toward me. She touched her cheek, showing them something. A red mark. Self-inflicted, I knew. I'd seen enough staged evidence in my career to recognize it. The angle was wrong. The bruising pattern inconsistent with someone else's hand. But that wasn't something I could explain in the moment. At the station, they booked me. Domestic assault. Assault with a deadly weapon, making terroristic threats. The weapons charge elevated everything, transformed a misdemeanor situation into something far more serious. The magistrate set bail at $250,000. "Sir, given the weapons element and the severity of the alleged threats." "I want a lawyer," I said for the 7th time. I got my one phone call at 9 a.m. "Nathan," I said when my brother picked up, "I need you to listen carefully. Don't interrupt. I'm at the Fairfax County Detention Facility. I've been arrested for domestic assault. The charges are false. Victoria staged this. I need you to post my bail and meet me with a criminal defense strategy." There was a long pause. "Preston." His voice was strange. "Careful." "Vicky called me." Ice formed in my chest. "When?" "About midnight? Maybe 12:30? She was crying, man. Really crying. Said you've been acting erratic lately. Said she was scared. Didn't know what you might do. I told her she was probably overreacting, that you'd never—" "Nathan, listen to me. What time exactly did she call you?" "I don't know exactly. Middle of the night." "Why does it matter?" "Because she didn't call 911 until 2:47. The silence on the other end of the line told me my brother understood. Nathan Walker, criminal defense attorney with 15 years of trial experience, put the pieces together faster than I could speak them. "She was building a narrative," he said. "She was building a narrative. Before she even made the call, she was establishing witnesses who could testify that you'd been erratic and she'd been scared. Yes? Don't say another word. Not to anyone. Not to the guards. Not to other inmates. Not to anyone who offers to help. I'm on my way." The first 72 hours after my release on bail were an exercise in controlled paralysis. I couldn't go home. Emergency protective order prohibited me from coming within 500 feet of my own residence. Couldn't contact Victoria. Court mandate. Any communication would be considered witness tampering. Couldn't see my son Ethan. Temporary custody awarded to Victoria pending investigation. My 7-year-old boy was sleeping in my house and I couldn't be there to tuck him in. I stayed at Nathan's house in Alexandria, sleeping on his leather couch because even sitting still in a guest room felt like surrender. I needed to be ready. Ready to move, to act, to respond to whatever came next. "Walk me through it again," Nathan said on the 3rd day. We sat at his kitchen table, coffee going cold between us, legal pads scattered everywhere like fallen leaves. Everything you noticed, every detail, no matter how small. Her makeup, her hair. She doesn't sleep with makeup on, Nathan. She has a whole routine. Cleansers, toners, night cream. She looked like she was ready for a board meeting at 2:47 in the morning. What else? The gun positioned on the nightstand. My gun that she would have needed my fingerprint to retrieve from the safe. Which means she accessed it while I was asleep, pressed my thumb to the scanner while I was unconscious. Nathan made a note. That's premeditation, clear evidence of planning. What else? Her demeanor. Nathan, I've seen people in crisis. I've seen soldiers under fire, their hands shaking so badly they couldn't load magazines. I've seen civilians caught in crossfire, screaming, crying, completely non-functional. I've seen interrogation subjects breaking down under pressure. Victoria wasn't in crisis. She was executing a plan. And she mouthed "don't" to you. She was telling me not to react, not to give the responding officers a reason to shoot. She wanted me arrested, not dead, at least not by her hand. Though if I'd reached for that gun, Nathan set down his pen, rubbed his eyes. When he looked at me again, I saw a new hardness there. Preston, I need you to hear what I'm about to say. This isn't a crime of passion. This isn't a marriage falling apart in some tragic but understandable way. This is a campaign, planned, funded, executed with precision. I'm starting to understand that. No, you don't. Not fully. I've been making calls. Discreetly. Pulling on threads. He slid a folder across the table. Victoria retained a divorce attorney 6 months ago. Rachel Simmons. High conflict specialist. The kind of lawyer who helps people prepare for ugly custody battles. 6 months. She's been documenting incidents in a journal for over a year. All fabricated, obviously, but detailed. Timestamps, descriptions, alleged threats. It reads like a horror story, and it's designed to. 14 months of planning. She opened a separate bank account 8 months ago. Been siphoning money, small amounts, under the radar. 200 here, 300 there, all within ranges that wouldn't trigger alerts. How much total? We're still calculating. Significant. What else? Nathan hesitated. That hesitation scared me more than anything else. Nathan, 3 weeks ago she changed the beneficiary on your life insurance policy, removed Ethan, made herself the sole beneficiary. I felt the floor shift beneath me. My son. She'd removed our son from my life insurance policy, a policy worth $1.2 million. She was hoping I'd fight back, I said slowly, the realization settling into my bones like poison. She wanted the police to shoot me, or for me to do something that would justify lethal force. That's my read too. If I'd reached for that gun, you'd be dead. Suicide by cop, they'd call it. Aggressive suspect reached for a weapon. Officers had no choice. And Victoria would be a grieving widow with a 7-figure payout, a sympathetic narrative, and our son all to herself. I sat with that for a long moment. 9 years of marriage, a son together, and she'd orchestrated my execution with the same cold efficiency she used to plan our anniversary dinners. What do? I asked. Nathan smiled. It wasn't a pleasant expression. We tear her apart, legally, completely, and we don't stop until there's nothing left. Nathan brought in Diana Lawson 3 days later. She walked into his kitchen like she owned it. A woman in her early 50s with silver-streaked hair and eyes that had seen every variety of human cruelty. She wore a gray suit that cost more than my monthly mortgage payment, and she moved with the contained energy of a predator conserving its strength. Former prosecutor, Nathan said by way of introduction. 12 years convicting violent offenders. Now she defends people from false accusations. Diana shook my hand, her grip firm and businesslike. I've read your file, Mr. Walker. Your wife made some mistakes. Such as? She got greedy. People who plan these things usually do. Diana opened her briefcase and spread documents across the table with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. They spend months constructing their trap, and they become so confident in their own cleverness that they stop being careful. You've seen this before? More often than I'd like. False accusations in domestic situations are rare in the overall statistics, but they do happen, and when they happen, they follow patterns. Your wife followed the pattern almost perfectly, which means we know exactly where to look for her mistakes. She laid out her strategy. First thing, I want all the body camera footage from the responding officers. Every second, from the moment they left the station until they booked you at the jail. Can we get that? It's public record with some redactions. We'll get it. Second, full subpoena for her phone records, text messages, call logs, location data, search history, everything she's done on that device for the past year. She'll claim spousal privilege. Spousal privilege doesn't cover conspiracy to commit murder, which is what this was, make no mistake. Third, I'm hiring a private investigator. Grant Mitchell, retired detective, 30 years on the force, owes me about 7 favors from cases where I didn't prosecute people he wanted prosecuted. He's relentless, thorough, and very, very patient. And if she has an explanation for everything? Diana looked at me like I'd asked a stupid question. Mr. Walker, in my experience, fabricated stories have a particular smell. They're too clean, too rehearsed, too perfect. Your wife didn't account for the body cameras. She didn't know they'd catch her stage managing the crime scene. She didn't account for digital forensics. She didn't realize her phone was a record of every lie she's ever told. And most importantly, Diana tapped the table for emphasis, she didn't account for you not reacting. She expected you to do what most innocent men do when their wives betray them, which is panic, defend yourself, protest, try to take the gun, give the officers a reason to put you down. Diana shook her head. Instead, you went submissive immediately. You waited. You said 5 words and no more. That's not the behavior of a guilty man. That's the behavior of someone who understood exactly what was happening. Military training, which she underestimated. It's the first crack in her armor. There will be more. Grant Mitchell looked exactly like Central Casting's idea of a retired homicide detective. Rumpled sport coat that had seen better decades, skeptical squint that could wilt a witness at 50 paces, and a memory that made liars regret ever opening their mouths. He was 62 years old, had solved over 300 homicides, and had forgotten more about criminal behavior than most detectives ever learned. "Tell me about your wife," he said during our first meeting. "Not the wife who tried to kill you, the wife you married." The question caught me off guard. Why does that matter? Because people don't change, Mr. Walker. They just reveal themselves over time. The woman who called 911 that night? She's been in there all along. I need to understand who you thought you married so I can understand who you actually married. I considered the question. She was magnetic, confident. When she walked into a room, everyone noticed. She had this way of making you feel like you were the only person who mattered. When she was focused on you. And when she wasn't focused on you? Cold, distant. I chalked it up to work stress. She was climbing the corporate ladder, ambitious, driven. I respected that. Grant made a note. Did she have close friends? Acquaintances? Colleagues? But close friends? No. Looking back, I don't think I ever met anyone who'd known her before we started dating. Everyone in her life was someone she'd met after. What happened to the people before? I didn't have an answer to that. Grant nodded slowly. That's a pattern, Mr. Walker. People like your wife, they burn through relationships, use people up and move on. The smart ones learn to hide the bodies. Metaphorically? Sometimes not. He stood. I'm going to find out who Victoria really is. It may take a few weeks. You might not like what I find. I met his gaze. I already don't like anything about this. The body camera footage came in 3 weeks later. We'd established a rhythm by then. Weekly meetings in Diana's office, a sparse room decorated primarily with law degrees, and a single photograph of Diana shaking hands with someone who looked important. Grant plugged a flash drive into Diana's laptop. "You need to see this." The footage began with the responding officers in their patrol car, lights flashing, racing through the quiet suburban streets. Unit 215 responding to domestic in progress, 1847 Maple Ridge Drive. Caller reports armed male subject, possibly intoxicated, threatening to kill his wife. Approach with extreme caution. I watched myself die in their imagination. They were expecting a monster, a threat, something to be neutralized. They entered my house. The sweep was professional. I could find no fault with their tactics. And then, Victoria. She stood in the corner of the bedroom, arms wrapped around herself in the universal gesture of victimhood. But she wasn't trembling. She was directing. "The gun is right there on the nightstand. Make sure you photograph that. He keeps more weapons in the closet. There's a safe. And check his phone. He's been texting his mistress." That's what this was about. I confronted him about the affair and he just lost it. I watched my wife stage manage her own crime scene. "Wait," I said. "What mistress?" Grant paused the footage. "There is no mistress. We've pulled your phone records, your work emails, your social media accounts. You're clean." But she planted the accusation early, knowing it would be investigated. Even when proven false, it makes you look bad. It's a technique. She's done this before? That's what I'm trying to find out. Grant resumed the video. But here's the thing that caught my attention. Watch her face, not what she's saying. Her face. I watched. Victoria was going through the motions of victimhood, the hand-wringing, the shaky voice, the occasional manufactured sob. But her eyes were wrong. They kept darting to the officers, checking their reactions, adjusting her performance based on what she saw. "She's testing what works," I observed. "Exactly." She tries a sob, sees if they respond with more sympathy. They do? She sobs again. They don't? She switches to righteous anger. She's calibrating in real time. Diana made a note. Victims in genuine distress don't stage manage their rescue. They're too overwhelmed. This is performance behavior. Which brings me to my next discovery. Grant pulled out a folder. I've been tracking where Victoria's been spending her time. There's a hotel in Richmond, the Marriott off I-95. She's been meeting someone there regularly, every other Thursday for the past 4 months. An affair. That's what I assumed. But no. He slid a photograph across the desk. The image was grainy, surveillance distance, but clear enough. Victoria standing outside the hotel lobby with an older man in an expensive suit. Lawrence Ashford, her father. Victoria's father lives in Connecticut. He's been making trips, regularly, flying into Reagan National, driving to Richmond for these meetings, then driving back and flying home. Every other Thursday, like clockwork. Why Richmond? My guess? Far enough from both their homes to avoid accidental discovery. But here's where it gets interesting. Grant spread more documents across the desk. Lawrence Ashford is wealthy, connected, and has a very long memory. He never approved of your marriage. You were working class, a soldier, beneath his daughter. He was polite enough at the wedding. Men like Ashford are always polite. It's the knife behind the smile you have to watch for. Grant leaned forward. According to my sources, and these are preliminary, I'm still confirming, Lawrence has been funding Victoria's operation since day one. Diana's head snapped up. What kind of funding? He paid for the divorce attorney, those initial consultations. She didn't use her own money. He paid for something called a reputation consultant, essentially a coach who helped Victoria develop and rehearse her story. The 911 call? She practiced it. Multiple times. At her father's house in Connecticut, using a script they developed together. The journal, I said. suggested by a family attorney, also on Lawrence's payroll, as documentation for the eventual custody battle. Every incident Victoria recorded was scripted, planned, designed to create a paper trail that would hold up in court. I sat back in my chair. Her father wants me destroyed. He wants you removed, Grant corrected. You specifically, and everything you represent. The working-class soldier who dared to marry his princess. But here's the leverage, Preston. Lawrence Ashford has political connections. Business connections. He's a man who values his reputation above all else. If this goes public, if people find out he helped his daughter frame an innocent man, paid for coaches and attorneys to manufacture false evidence, his entire empire crumbles. Diana smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. So we find proof. Concrete, undeniable proof. And then we make him choose between sacrificing Victoria or sacrificing himself. Grant's next discovery came in early December, and it changed everything. She has a lover, he announced at our weekly meeting, tossing a fresh folder onto Diana's desk. Not her father, different guy. Name's Derek Holloway, 40 years old, senior marketing director at Victoria's pharmaceutical company. Her boss? Direct supervisor. Grant spread photographs across the desk. Derek Holloway looked exactly like the kind of man who would sleep with his subordinate. Polished, confident, wearing a watch that cost more than my car. Been sleeping together for 18 months. Before she started planning this. The timeline overlaps. But here's the twist. He doesn't know about the plan. Explain. Victoria's been telling Derek they're going to leave their spouses and run off together. He thinks this is a love affair. He thinks she's a victim of an abusive marriage who's gathering the courage to leave. He has no idea she was planning to have you killed. Diana leaned back in her chair. He has text messages. Hundreds of them. And according to my sources, I have someone who works at the same company. Some of them mention Victoria's plan to handle her husband and finally be free. Derek didn't realize what she meant. He thought she was talking about divorce. I felt something shift in my chest. Not hope exactly. I wasn't ready for hope, but possibility. If we can get Derek to cooperate, then we have proof of premeditation, Diana finished. We have text messages showing she planned this for months. We have a witness who can testify to her state of mind, her intentions, her callousness. It won't just exonerate you, it'll destroy her case from the foundation up. One problem, Grant said, holding up a warning finger. Derek cooperates. His affair goes public. His marriage ends. His career is over. Sexual relationship with a direct report is a firing offense, especially at a pharmaceutical company that's already under scrutiny for workplace culture issues. So he has to choose, I said. He has to understand what he's really dealing with. He thinks Victoria is a wounded bird he's helping to fly. He doesn't know she's a predator who's been using him as part of her plan. Diana stood, began pacing. Then we make him understand. We show him the evidence. We let him see what Victoria really is. And we let him make the choice with full knowledge. Grant approached Derek Holloway on December 28th at a coffee shop in Arlington. Neutral territory, public enough for safety, private enough for honesty. I wasn't there. Diana advised against it. But Grant recorded the conversation with Derek's reluctant permission. I listened to that recording a dozen times. Every word burned itself into my memory. Mr. Holloway, I appreciate you meeting with me. I know this isn't easy. Your message said it was urgent, about Victoria. Derek's voice was guarded, suspicious. What's this about? I'm going to be direct with you. I don't have time for games, and neither do you. The woman you've been sleeping with tried to have her husband killed. There was a long silence on the recording. I could imagine Derek's face, the confusion, the denial, the first cracks of doubt. That's insane. You don't know what you're talking about. Vicky said he attacked her. She showed me photographs of the bruises, self-inflicted. The bruising pattern is inconsistent with strangulation. The angles are wrong for someone else's hand. They're consistent with her pressing her own fingers against her own throat. Forensic experts have already analyzed them. That's not possible. I saw those bruises. They looked real. They were real bruises, Mr. Holloway. She just put them there herself. But she cried in my arms, for hours. She said he threatened to kill her if she ever left him. Did you ever witness these threats? No, but I wasn't there for everything. Did you ever see any evidence of abuse? Bruises she didn't create herself? Controlling behavior? Did Preston Walker ever call while you were together, demanding to know where she was? No, but did she ever seem afraid to go home? Check her phone nervously? Flinch when someone moved too quickly? Silence. Did she ever have unexplained injuries after being with him? Did she ever seem relieved to be away from him? More silence. The truth is, Mr. Holloway, Victoria never acted like an abuse victim because she isn't one. She was planning an elaborate scheme to have her husband killed by police, and failing that, imprisoned for crimes he didn't commit. And you were part of that plan. No. No, that's not... We're in love. She said we were going to be together once she was free of him. Grant's voice softened slightly. Tell me about that. What exactly did she promise you? That once her situation was handled, we'd be together. She'd get the divorce, get custody of her son, and we'd start a new life. Maybe move to California. She talked about it all the time. And you believed her? Why wouldn't I? She showed me pictures of bruises. She cried about being trapped. She said he controlled all the money and she had no way out. Mr. Holloway, Victoria's husband is a former Army intelligence officer with an unblemished service record. He's never been arrested, never been disciplined at work, never had a restraining order filed against him before this. His colleagues describe him as calm, controlled, patient. People can hide things. They can, but they can't hide everything. Let me tell you what happened on the night of the alleged assault. Grant laid it out. The staged scene, the positioned weapon, the rehearsed 911 call, the life insurance policy. $1.2 million, Grant finished. She changed it 3 weeks before, removed their son, made herself the sole beneficiary. I could hear Derek's breathing change on the recording. Quick, shallow, the sound of a man realizing he'd been deceived in every way that mattered. She told me they didn't have life insurance. She said he refused to get it because he didn't care what happened to her if he died. She said it was one of many ways he showed her she didn't matter to him. She told you a lot of things, Mr. Holloway. How many of them were true? A longer silence this time. I could almost hear him replaying every conversation, every tear, every promise. The meetings with her father, Derek said finally. She told me those were about an inheritance issue, her grandmother's estate. They were planning sessions. She and Lawrence Ashford had been coordinating this operation for over a year. Oh God. Did she tell you about the journal she'd been keeping? Fabricated incidents, scripted to look like documentation of abuse? She told me she kept a journal. For her therapist. She said it helped her process the trauma. There is no therapist, Mr. Holloway. The journal was manufactured evidence, created with the help of an attorney her father paid for. Oh God. Did she tell you about the reputation consultant who helped her rehearse her 911 call? No, I don't. What are you talking about? Victoria practiced that call multiple times. She had a script. She trained herself to hit certain emotional notes at certain moments. The trembling victim voice she used, that was performance. Coached performance. The sound of someone breathing very fast, very shallow. What do you want from me? The text messages. All of them. Every communication you've had with Victoria since this relationship began. And a sworn statement about everything she told you about her plan for her husband. If I do this, My marriage is over. My career is over. Everything I've built for 20 years, your marriage is over anyway, Mr. Holloway. The moment you got involved with Victoria, your marriage was over. You just haven't faced that yet. Your career was over the moment you started a sexual relationship with a direct report. That's a firing offense at your company, and you know it. I know. The only question now is whether you go down as a co-conspirator in attempted murder, or as a witness who helped bring a dangerous woman to justice. Which story do you want told about you? A very long pause. There's something else, Derek said finally. Something she mentioned once when she'd had too much wine. I didn't think much of it at the time. Tell me. She said she had insurance in case the plan failed. I asked what she meant, and she said she'd provoked an argument with Preston, got him to say threatening things, and recorded the whole thing on her phone. She was going to use it as backup evidence if she needed it. Did she show you this recording? No, but she seemed proud of it. Like it was a chess move she was particularly pleased with. Grant let that hang in the air. I remembered that argument, about 6 weeks before the false arrest. We'd been in the kitchen. Victoria had pushed and pushed, needling me about my family, my career, my inadequacies as a husband and father. You're never home. Ethan barely knows you. And when you are here, you're mentally somewhere else, thinking about work, about your precious security clearances and government secrets. Victoria, that's not fair. Fair? You want to talk about fair? I gave up my career trajectory to move to this nothing suburb so you could be closer to your contractor job. I could have been a VP by now if we'd stayed in New York. She'd wanted me to snap, to raise my voice, to say something I'd regret. I could feel the trap even then, though I didn't understand its scope. So I'd walked away, gone to the garage, let her rage burn itself out. But she'd recorded it anyway. And somewhere on that recording, I knew she'd edited out her provocations. Made it sound like I was ranting at her for no reason. Made it sound like she was the victim of an unprovoked tirade. Can we prove the audio was manipulated? I asked Diana, after Grant played that part of the recording. With the right expert, absolutely. Audio forensics can detect edits, splices, missing segments. The sound profile changes when segments are removed. The ambient noise patterns don't match. It'll actually help our case. It shows the depth of her planning. This wasn't a moment of passion. This was a years-long operation. Derek provided his statement on January 5th. Diana filed the motion to dismiss 2 days later, accompanied by enough evidence to fill a small library. The next week, Lawrence Ashford made his move. A journalist named Tom Crawford from a local news outlet received an anonymous tip about me. Alleged workplace misconduct. Claims I'd sexually harassed female colleagues at my defense contractor job. Completely fabricated, but the story ran anyway. Defense contractor analyst accused of harassment amid domestic violence charges, the headline screamed. My phone rang continuously for 3 days. My employer launched an internal investigation. My security clearance was flagged for review. My career, everything I'd built over 15 years, teetered on the edge of a cliff. Victoria's father was trying to destroy me in the court of public opinion before we ever reached an actual court. Let him, Diana said calmly when I called her in a panic. Let him overreach. Every move he makes now creates more evidence of conspiracy. It'll make what comes next more satisfying. She arranged a counter-interview with a different journalist, Sarah Reeves from the Washington Post. A real journalist, not a tabloid hack. Diana presented her with the body camera footage analysis, the phone forensics, Victoria's search history, Derek's statement. The story Sarah wrote was devastating. Woman allegedly staged domestic violence, planned husband's death, the headline read. The article laid out everything. Victoria's 18 months of preparation, her father's involvement, Derek's testimony, the manipulated audio. It painted a picture of a calculated predator who'd tried to weaponize the justice system against an innocent man. Public sentiment shifted overnight. The harassment story evaporated. The women I'd allegedly harassed came forward to say they'd never spoken to any journalist and the claims were false. But that wasn't the knockout blow. That came 2 days later, when a woman named Megan Cross contacted our office. "I used to work with Victoria," Megan said when we met. She was mid-30s, professional, wearing the kind of conservative business suit that suggested she worked in a field where appearance mattered. But her eyes were wary, the eyes of someone who'd seen things she wished she could forget. 3 years ago, she continued, different company. We were both in marketing. There was a man in the department, Keith Palmer, senior account manager, good at his job, well-liked, married, devoted to his wife. Victoria wanted him. Wanted him? Made it obvious, flirted at company events, found excuses to be in meetings with him, suggested working lunches that were really just her trying to get time alone with him. Megan shook her head. He wasn't interested. Told her no, as politely as someone can say no to a colleague who won't stop hitting on them. What happened? She filed a harassment complaint, completely fabricated, said he'd cornered her in the break room, made inappropriate comments, touched her without consent, said it happened multiple times and she'd been too afraid to report it. And the company believed her? Of course they did. This was right when everything was changing, when companies were terrified of being seen as protecting harassers. They didn't investigate. They just wanted the problem to go away. Keith was fired within 2 weeks. Was there any evidence? None. And I knew it was false because I was there for one of the alleged incidents. Victoria claimed Keith trapped her in the break room on a Tuesday afternoon around 3 p.m. That specific Tuesday afternoon, Victoria and I were at a client lunch across town. I was with her the entire time. She couldn't have been in the break room because she wasn't even in the building. Did you tell anyone? Megan's face tightened. I tried. I went to HR. Told them Victoria's story was impossible, that I could account for her whereabouts. They said they'd take it under advisement, and then nothing happened. Keith was still fired. When I pushed harder, I was suddenly on the receiving end of a performance improvement plan for attitude issues. So you stopped pushing. I had a mortgage, student loans. I couldn't afford to lose my job over someone else's battle. She looked down at her hands. I've regretted that ever since. Would you testify to this? Megan hesitated. Victoria has powerful friends, her father especially. There could be retaliation. I could lose everything. We can protect you, Diana said. Can you? Can you really? Megan looked up and I saw something harden in her expression. But you know what? It doesn't matter. What she did to Keith destroyed him. A good man. An innocent man. His marriage fell apart under the stress. He lost custody of his kids. Last I heard, he was working as a security guard somewhere, barely making rent, drinking too much to forget. She took a breath. I heard her afterward, you know, in the ladies' room. She was bragging to another woman about how easy it was. How stupid Keith was for thinking his reputation would save him. How men never expect a woman to lie about these things, so they never prepare for it. So you'll testify. I'll testify. And I'll help you find Keith. He deserves to see Victoria finally face consequences. The preliminary hearing took place on January 20th in the Fairfax County Courthouse. I wore my best suit and a calm expression I didn't feel. Victoria sat across the aisle with her attorney, Reginald Price, a high-powered D.C. lawyer her father had hired. Price was good, expensive, but he had a losing hand and he knew it. Your Honor, Diana began, we move to dismiss all charges against Preston Walker on the grounds that the alleged victim fabricated her accusations as part of a premeditated scheme to have her husband killed by responding officers or imprisoned on false charges. Price objected. The judge overruled. Diana called Dr. Marcus Webb, an expert in victim behavior and body language, He walked the court through the body camera footage frame by frame. The alleged victim displays none of the physiological markers consistent with genuine traumatic stress, Dr. Webb testified. Heart rate indicators are normal. No flushing, no pallor, no visible pulse elevation, no micro-expressions of fear or distress. Instead, we observe controlled movements, directed attention, and what I would characterize as performance behavior. She is executing a script, not experiencing trauma. Next came the forensic phone expert, who walked the court through Victoria's search history. In the week preceding the incident, the defendant searched for, how long does it take for bruises to appear? What do strangulation marks look like? Virginia domestic violence sentencing guidelines. Can a wife testify against her husband? And most critically, he paused, how to make it look like self-defense if he fights back, the gallery murmured. The defendant was researching how to manufacture evidence and how to ensure her husband would react violently to her provocation. Derek Holloway testified next. He looked like a man who hadn't slept in weeks. She talked about handling Preston, Derek said. I thought she meant divorce lawyers, asset protection, that kind of thing. She never said, his voice broke. I didn't know she was trying to get him killed. I thought we were in love. Did she ever express genuine fear of her husband? No. She complained about him, called him boring, said he was beneath her, said he was useful until he wasn't. Megan Cross took the stand. Then Keith Palmer, found working as a night security guard in Baltimore, still bitter, still broken, but willing to face Victoria and tell his story. She destroyed my life over a rejection, Keith said. I said no to her advances, and she manufactured a harassment case that cost me my career, my marriage, my kids. I've spent 3 years wondering what I did wrong. Now I know. I just told the wrong woman no. Finally, Diana presented the audio analysis. Our expert examined the audio file obtained from the defendant's cloud storage, Diana explained. The recording has been edited. 7 distinct segments are missing. Segments where voice analysis suggests the defendant was speaking. The remaining audio contains only the plaintiff's responses to provocations that have been removed. She played the comparison. The prosecutor, a young woman named Jennifer Hayes who'd clearly been assigned a case her superiors expected to win, looked physically ill. Your Honor, she said, standing slowly, the state moves to dismiss all charges. The judge's gavel came down at 4:47 p.m. Case dismissed. The defendant is free to go with the court's acknowledgement that he has endured a significant injustice. I sat there for a long moment, not quite believing it was over. Across the aisle, Victoria's mask finally cracked. I saw fury in her eyes, pure, undisguised rage. She'd underestimated me. She'd forgotten what I was before I was her husband. But I wasn't done. On February 1st, I filed for divorce on grounds of adultery and fraud. On February 3rd, I filed civil suit against Victoria for malicious prosecution, defamation, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. On February 7th, I filed civil suit against Lawrence Ashford for conspiracy and tortious interference. Nathan called it the carpet bombing phase. She tried to have me killed, I told him. She tried to take my son. She gets to experience exactly what she planned to do to me. Victoria's world collapsed in stages. Her employer fired her after Derek's testimony became public. Sexual relationship with supervisor plus using company resources for personal vendetta equaled termination for cause. No severance. Her father's board of directors demanded his resignation. His political connections stopped returning calls. Derek's wife took him for everything in their divorce. And in our civil discovery, my forensic accountant found that Victoria and Lawrence had hidden over $400,000 in offshore accounts. That triggered FBI interest in financial fraud. The custody battle for Ethan came in May. The family courtroom was smaller than the criminal courthouse, more intimate, which somehow made it worse. This wasn't about punishment. This was about my son, about who would shape his life, his understanding of truth and love and trust. Victoria's attorney, a new one, Reginald Price had dropped her case when her father stopped paying, rose to make her opening argument. Your Honor, we're here today because this court must decide what's in the best interest of a child, not what's in the best interest of either parent, not what serves as reward or punishment for adult behavior. What serves this 8-year-old boy? She paused, letting that land. My client is Ethan's mother. She carried him for 9 months. She nursed him. She was there for his first steps, his first words, his first day of school. Whatever mistakes she may have made in her marriage, and we're not here to relitigate those, they don't reflect on her capacity as a parent. Diana stood to respond. Your Honor, the petitioner didn't make mistakes in her marriage. She orchestrated a scheme designed to either end her husband's life or imprison him for crimes he didn't commit. She positioned a firearm where he would be likely to reach for it when armed police officers entered their home. She made a false 911 call claiming he was violent and armed, with the intent of provoking a lethal police response. And she removed their son from her husband's life insurance policy, the same policy she expected to collect upon his death. Objection, Victoria's attorney interjected. The petitioner was not charged with any crime. No, she wasn't, Diana agreed, because the charges were against my client. Charges that were dismissed when the evidence showed the alleged victim was the actual perpetrator. The absence of criminal charges against Victoria Walker doesn't mean she did nothing wrong. It means the criminal justice system was focused on the wrong target. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s named Ellen Hartley, held up her hand. I've read the briefings from both sides. I'm aware of the criminal case and its outcome. What I need to understand is how this affects the child's welfare. Proceed. The child psychologist Diana had hired testified next. I conducted 3 sessions with Ethan Walker over a period of 4 weeks, Dr. Carolyn Foster reported. She was a gentle-looking woman with gray-streaked hair and the patient demeanor of someone who spent her life listening to children. Can you describe Ethan's understanding of the family situation? Ethan is aware that something serious happened between his parents. He understands that his father was arrested and then released. When I asked him how he felt about this, he said, and I'm quoting directly from my notes, I think Mom made up a story about Dad and got him in trouble. Like I did once when I broke the lamp and said the cat did it. Did you explore this further? I did. I asked Ethan why he thought his mother had made up a story. He said, again, quoting directly, because she makes up stories sometimes. She tells Dad one thing and me a different thing and Grammy another thing. I have to be careful to remember which story I'm supposed to believe. Victoria's attorney stood. Your Honor, this is a child's imagination. Children make things up all the time. Children also perceive truths that adults try to hide, Judge Hartley said. Continue, Dr. Foster. When asked about his father, Ethan described feeling safe and comfortable. He said his father explains things, doesn't get angry when he makes mistakes, and takes him to soccer practice every Saturday, or did, before the separation. And when asked about his mother, Dr. Foster consulted her notes. Ethan used the word careful. He said he has to be careful around his mother. When I asked what he meant, he said, I have to think about what she wants me to say before I say things. With Dad, I can just talk. Did you observe any signs that Ethan had been coached by his father? None. His responses were spontaneous and consistent across sessions. There was no indication of coached language or rehearsed statements. If anything, Ethan appeared protective of his mother. He didn't want to get her in trouble, as he put it. His concerns emerged despite his evident desire to please both parents. The hearing continued. More witnesses, more testimony. Victoria took the stand and gave a practiced performance, tearful, remorseful, claiming she'd been confused and under stress and had made mistakes. But the judge wasn't fooled. "Mrs. Walker," Judge Hartley said during cross-examination, "I've reviewed the body camera footage from the night of the incident. I've read the forensic analysis of your phone records. I've seen the evidence of premeditation stretching back over a year. And I've listened to your testimony today. Can you explain to me why I should believe anything you're saying now?" Victoria's composure cracked. "I'm Ethan's mother. I love him. Whatever I did..." "What you did, Mrs. Walker, was attempt to have your child's father killed. You positioned a weapon where he would be tempted to reach for it. You made a false report designed to provoke armed response. You changed his life insurance policy to maximize your payout upon his death. These are not the actions of a confused person. These are the actions of a calculating one. I was scared. He was controlling, and there is no evidence of any controlling behavior by your husband. None. In 18 months of supposed documentation, you never once mentioned control to Derek Holloway. You never complained to friends or family. You never sought help from any domestic violence organization. The first anyone heard of controlling behavior was after the charges were dismissed and you needed a new narrative. Victoria had no response to that. 2 days later, she made her final mistake. On May 28th, 2 days before the custody ruling was expected, Grant called me at 6 a.m. She ran. I was instantly awake. "What?" "Airport, Reagan National. She had tickets to Zurich, one way. Tried to take Ethan with her. TSA flagged the travel because of the pending custody case and the existing protective orders. She's being detained." I was at the airport within an hour. Victoria sat in a holding area, her carefully maintained composure finally shattered. She was wearing travel clothes, jeans, a cashmere sweater, and her face was blotchy from crying. Real crying this time. Not the manufactured kind. Ethan sat beside her, wide-eyed and confused. His backpack was at his feet. He clutched a stuffed dog I'd given him for his 5th birthday. "Daddy?" I knelt in front of my son. "Hey, buddy, it's okay. You're okay. Mom said we were going on a trip, a surprise trip. But then people started asking questions and Mom got upset." "I know. But you're going to come home with me now, okay?" "Okay." He looked at Victoria. "Is Mom in trouble?" I chose my words carefully. Mom made some choices that weren't good choices, and now there are consequences. But that's grown-up stuff. You don't need to worry about it. Victoria's voice cut through. "You can't do this. You can't just take him. He's my son too. He needs his mother." "Actually," Diana said, appearing behind me with a court officer, "Mr. Walker can. Given that you've just attempted to violate multiple court orders and flee the jurisdiction with a minor child, the emergency motion I filed 20 minutes ago has been granted. Ethan goes with his father. And you..." She nodded to the officer. "You're under arrest for attempted parental kidnapping." They cuffed Victoria in front of our son. I turned Ethan away so he wouldn't have to watch. But I think he understood. On some level, children always understand. The family court judge issued her final ruling 3 days later. Preston Walker was awarded full custody of the minor child, Ethan Walker. Victoria Walker was granted supervised visitation only, every other weekend, contingent on completion of court-mandated psychological evaluation and counseling, evidence of stable employment and housing, and strict compliance with all court orders. She was ordered to pay child support. She cried in the courtroom. Real tears this time, not manufactured, not strategic. The tears of a woman who'd finally run out of moves. I felt nothing. The civil trial verdict came in July. The trial itself lasted 3 weeks. Victoria's attorney, her 4th since her father stopped paying, tried everything. He argued her mental state was compromised by stress. He claimed she'd been manipulated by others. He suggested everyone else was to blame. None of it worked. I took the stand on the 5th day. Mr. Walker, Diana said, can you describe what it was like to wake up that night and realize what was happening? At first, confusion, then clarity. I understood immediately that my wife had positioned a trap designed to kill me. If I moved wrong, if I reached for that weapon, I'd be dead within minutes. I had to make myself as non-threatening as possible and hope the officers didn't shoot anyway. And after you understood the full scope of what she'd planned? Betrayal doesn't cover it. We'd been together 12 years. We had a son. She'd spent 18 months planning my destruction while smiling at me across the dinner table, sharing a bed with me. There's no word for that kind of betrayal. Victoria's attorney tried to attack my credibility during cross-examination, suggesting my intelligence training made me manipulative. The jury didn't buy it. They heard from all our witnesses. They saw all our evidence. The pattern of behavior stretching back years. They deliberated for 4 hours. In the matter of Walker versus Walker, we find for the plaintiff on all counts. We award compensatory damages of $1.2 million. In the matter of Walker versus Ashford, we find for the plaintiff on all counts. We award compensatory damages of $800,000. Additionally, we award punitive damages of $500,000. $2.5 million total. Victoria had no job, no assets, no custody, no reputation. Lawrence refused to help her. She was a liability now. I watched Victoria leave the courthouse. No entourage, no supporters. Just a woman in last season's designer clothes, walking toward a future that held nothing she'd planned for. She looked at me as she passed. I held her gaze for 3 seconds. Then I turned away. She wasn't worth more of my time. A year later, a letter arrived. No return address. Victoria's handwriting on the envelope. I recognized the elegant cursive she'd always been so proud of. I almost threw it away unopened. But some part of me, the intelligence officer who never stopped assessing, never stopped gathering information, made me tear it open. A single page. Handwritten. I thought I was smarter than you. I thought I could break you. I forgot who you were before you were my husband. I forgot you survived worse than me. You didn't just win. You waited. You watched. You let me destroy myself. I'll never forgive you for that. I read it twice. Considered responding. Decided against it. What would I say? That she was right? That I had watched her destroy herself? That every time she'd escalated, I'd recognized another piece of evidence she was creating against herself? Another nail in the coffin she was building with her own hands? I hadn't saved her from herself. I hadn't tried to. Maybe that made me cold. Maybe that made me calculating. Or maybe it just made me a man who'd learned the hard way that you can't save someone who's determined to burn everything down. I put the letter in a drawer. Not to keep, to forget. I picked up Ethan from school that afternoon. He bounded toward the car, backpack bouncing, already talking before he got the door open. Dad, guess what? Ms. Patterson said my science project was one of the best in the class, and Tyler wants me to come to his birthday party next week. Can I go? And we're doing a field trip to the Natural History Museum, and we need permission slips signed by tomorrow. Slow down, buddy, I smiled. One thing at a time. Yes, to Tyler's party. I'll sign the permission slip tonight. And congratulations on the science project. I'm proud of you. He beamed. We drove home through familiar streets. The new house was in a different neighborhood. Fresh start, fresh walls, no memories of the old life lurking in every corner. Ethan had his own room, bigger than the old one, with a window that looked out on a yard where he could actually play. Dad? Yeah? Is Mom okay? I glanced at him in the rearview mirror. Why do you ask? I saw her last weekend, at the visit. She seemed sad. She kept saying she was sorry and crying. I chose my words carefully. Your mom is having a hard time right now. She made some choices that had consequences, and she's dealing with those consequences. But that's not something you need to worry about. She's an adult. She'll figure it out. Do you think she'll get better? I don't know, buddy. I hope so. But some things are up to her, not us. Ethan was quiet for a moment. Then, I'm glad I live with you, Dad. I'm glad too. We pulled into the driveway. The house was small, nothing like the place we'd had before, but it was mine. Ours. No one was going to take it away. Claire's car was already there. She'd started coming over for dinner a few times a week, helping me navigate the single-parent thing, providing a warm presence that Ethan responded to. We'd been taking things slow. Neither of us was in a hurry. "Claire!" Ethan yelled, running toward the door. I followed at my own pace, watching my son disappear into the house, hearing his excited voice describing his day. Life continued. Victoria was working retail somewhere, living in a studio apartment, alone. Her father had disowned her publicly. Derek wanted nothing to do with her. The friends who'd clustered around her during her rise had scattered during her fall. Fair-weather people who only valued winning. She'd called me boring once, said I was useful until I wasn't. Said I lacked ambition, passion, the drive to be somebody. She'd been half right. I wasn't exciting. I didn't make grand gestures or passionate declarations. I didn't scheme and manipulate and plot. But I was patient. I was methodical. And when threatened, I was absolutely, completely, relentlessly capable of dismantling whatever threatened me. Victoria had awakened something she didn't understand. She'd treated me like prey. She'd forgotten that a man who'd spent a decade in Army intelligence, who'd conducted interrogations, who'd dismantled enemy networks, who'd learned to read people the way others read books, wasn't the kind of man you wanted for an enemy. In the end, she'd been right about one thing. I'd let her destroy herself. Every move she made, every scheme she hatched, every ally she recruited, I'd watched it all unfold. I'd let her believe she was winning while the trap closed around her. And when she was fully committed, fully exposed, with no escape route and no backup plan, I'd close the trap. That was the part she'd never forgive. Not that I'd beaten her. That I'd never had to try. Ethan ran toward the house, backpack bouncing. I could hear Claire laughing at something he'd said. I followed at my own pace. Some people spend their lives building, others spend them destroying. Victoria chose destruction. I chose to survive. And in the end, that made all the difference.